I don't see it in the corner. And there it is. Hello. Welcome to Facebook Live with the Nebraska State Education Association. We are very excited to be with you this Sunday evening. We have had a very busy weekend at the NSEA. We had a Zoom meeting with about 320 of our closest friends. So if you are really into Zoom, that was an adventure and it worked out really well. So if you need any advice on 320 people on Zoom, you let us know. I am very happy to be joined tonight with my partner, Maddie Fennell, the Executive Director of NSEA. And we are very honored to have with us tonight Senator Kate Bolz, who is a senator from Lincoln. And also with us, we have James Michael Bowers, who is a city council person. I never know if we say city councilman, city council person from Lincoln, but he is also an NSEA member and he is a social worker for the Lincoln Public Schools. And we are very pleased that he is with us tonight. We're going to just kind of like we do every week, we have just a conversation, talk about what's going on, talk about what we did this week, and how we're getting through. And we want to know how you're doing as well. And we also want to know what questions you have for the senator and for our councilman to see what's happening statewide and also on the national level and in local things as well. So we've had questions submitted to us that we'll talk about. So today I enjoyed a beautiful day. I got to work on my patio and I wore my mask and I went to Earl May and I bought some plants and that was very good. It's always good to get your hands dirty, and since my nails don't look good anyway, it didn't bother me at all. So Maddie, what'd you do today?
So Jenny, I took a page from your playbook and I went on a picnic with my family down at the Conagra Park. My brother and his husband did the food, so I didn't even have to cook. My brother made his first pie and it was awesome. And my dad and my stepmom were there. It was really nice. It's the first time we've been able to be together since this whole thing began. So it was really great. And I will tell you, Jenny, I'm on week 8 and I have not chipped one. I call this my little like Hanukkah, you know, the eight nights of the sacred oil. These are my 8 weeks of nails. It's an
I tell her to keep them back this far.
I know, she's always saying, don't come too close.
Yeah.
Pretty soon they're going to be at a French because they've grown up so high. But anyway, they're still there.
James really cares about all this, but that's all good. That's all good. We bought a boat this week, so I'm very excited to go out and try boating as well. So that's a good social distancing. We've gone to the lake. Fishing is a good social distancing thing. I'm not a fisherman, but I will like to sit out in a boat for a while. So Kate, what have you been doing during this quarantine to stay busy and to stay healthy?
Yeah, the highlight of my day today was I did a treat drop off to my nieces who are 13 and 10, and you know, middle school age. Sometimes she likes being around me, and sometimes she'd rather not be seen in public with me. But I'm awfully handy in this certain time right now because I can still drive and bring her things. So got to give my nieces some love today.
That is always important. I have a new grandbaby that I get to give some love to tomorrow. And I was pleased last week we had Dr. Anton on, and he told us that, you know, social distancing outside, being safe is okay. So that's kind of how I see my grandchildren, you know. So what about you, James? How have you been doing during this quarantine?
Yeah, so today I've called my mom about 3 different times and got caught up on some phone calls and some work I needed to get done, and prepping for our city council meeting on Monday. So that's taken up the majority of my time today.
Yeah, so you're doing city council virtually as well?
Yes, we voted 2 weeks ago to move our meetings virtually to be held on technology to protect, you know, public health and to still get work done for the city that needs to be done. And so we've had our first meeting last Monday, and we're going to have another meeting this Monday over technology and virtually, just like on how we're doing this.
Excellent. I mean, things keep moving. That's what we found. You know, you just keep doing work. The legislature, though, Kate, hasn't met, but they will probably be having to come back together to do some things. So what's up with that?
Yeah, we are in recess until a time to be determined. That time is still being negotiated and decided. There are some of us, myself included, who think it might be prudent for us to wait until mid-July or early late August. And the reason for that is because the tax filing date got pushed back. We won't have a complete or clear fiscal picture until we have those receipts back in. And I think it's really important that we're making decisions based on good fiscal information. Some of our national partners tell us that we should prepare for a 15 to 25% reduction in our overall state revenues, which will be a significant hit to the state budget. We also have a lot of information that we're still sorting through from the federal stimulus packages, and we'll have to understand exactly how that plays out in the context of our particular scenario and disaster relief. We've found out so far that the CARES Act package, the big package that has rolled out, cannot be used to replace lost state revenue. And
Yes,
so
yes.
we can only be focused on COVID-related responses and needs, which is great. It's filling a demand, it's responding to the crisis. But to date, we're still figuring out how we'll respond from a state budget perspective, which we know will be both facing increased demands and having lost revenue. I'm sure the same is true on the city level as well.
When does the
I'm
state
sure.
forecasting board come out with their next predictions?
That's a great question, Maddie. And one of the things that I didn't know until we faced this particular crisis is that we can ask for both formal and informal forecasts. So we can ask for intermediate forecasts from our legislative fiscal office, and we've gotten some initial information from them. And then we can also call the forecasting board back together. And I think it would be prudent for us to call the forecasting board back together after we've seen the July 15th tax receipts.
Well, I know budgets for families are on their minds as well. As we hear from our members, we hear from our families, our students across the state about their own personal budgets and the strain that this quarantine and this pandemic has placed upon our families. And it's really providing some real challenges. Can you, James, maybe talk about some of the things in Lincoln that the city's doing or that you know of that are being done for folks who are having some food insecurities, having some issues with paying their bills? What's going on with that?
Yeah, absolutely. So Black Hills Energy, Lincoln Electric, and our water system have suspended disconnections for 2 months, which means that kind of frees up some money for people to be able to pay some other bills. For food insecurity, that's kind of at one of the most important basic needs that we have. And we are really fortunate to live in a city that makes that a priority in making sure that people have access to food. There's a couple different organizations that are providing daily food distribution. Center for People in Need provides food distribution Monday through Friday from 10 to 1 at their location, and also on Tuesday evenings at 4 o'clock. In order to receive food, all you need to do is bring either a picture ID, or if you have a client card, you can use that. But if you don't have that, then you can provide a picture ID. Food Bank of Lincoln provides daily food distribution Monday through Friday also. Their locations change, and so you can look up their locations at lincolnfoodbank.com. And then also FoodNet is doing food distributions weekly. So trying to help with some of the utility costs, trying to help with some of the food costs, to really help people as people are hitting a hit with their employment, or maybe have an increased cost through healthcare, making sure that as many dollars as possible can be used to getting those basic needs met. So those are some of the things that are happening in Lincoln.
Excellent. Kate, have you been hearing things across the state from your colleagues and things for food insecurities as well?
We have, and on the state and federal level, the CARES Act is allowing some additional flexibility for food stamp recipients, which is a really positive thing. And in addition to that, the CARES Act allows for something called pandemic EBT, which would be a specific provision for families with school-age children at home. The state has decided not to implement that as of yet. But that's actually something I would like to talk with teachers and with NSEA about. If this crisis continues into the fall, if we're still seeing some of that food insecurity and you're hearing about that from your families, there may be a point in time where we should encourage the Ricketts administration to reconsider taking advantage of pandemic EBT for those school-aged families. So that's something I hope that we're in close communication about. One other thing that I would mention in terms of family economic stability is I've begun to hear from folks, from constituents in my legislative office, that they have been waiting for such a long time for their unemployment insurance that they're starting to have rent checks due or starting to have bills come due. And I would really encourage anybody on this call who's facing a struggle, or anyone who is aware of a family who is facing that struggle, to have them reach out to their state senator. I'm happy to help, or their own state senator can help. The Department of Labor has been wonderful about expediting some of the requests and digging into some of the issues that I've brought to them from my constituents. So we're here to help.
Senator Bolz, you also put together, your office put together a really great resource for people, and our staff is going to put that in the Facebook Live now so that people have the link to that. Can you talk a little bit about why you guys decided you needed to put something out that was that comprehensive?
Yeah. Sam Hoopert in my office put together a great question and answer guide to government services in the age of coronavirus. And it ranges from, how do I get help for a senior citizen in my life who I'm concerned about, to what do I do if I think I've been scammed by someone trying to take advantage of this crisis, to how do I navigate the unemployment insurance system. So it's available on my legislative blog. If you search for it there, you can find it. There's over 50 questions directing people to answers, information, and contacts, or information about how to dig in deeper. And we've been updating that every few weeks so that we're keeping information fresh. But it's a good starting place if you've got some questions, or if you're trying to figure out where you go from here for yourself and your family. So we're happy to help. And if you have a question that's not answered in that Q&A, send it to me at my legislative office, and we'll incorporate it into the next update. My legislative email is kbolz@leg.ne.gov.
Thank you. Maddie, do we have some other questions in the chat?
We absolutely do. So one of them is around broadband. We know that we've really seen some equity issues. It's something that we've tried to address through Teacher TV, because we have a number of kids who don't have that. But I know that there were some bills that were in the legislature around this. And I know that some cities have also tried to work with their cable providers. So Senator Bolz, could you talk about this with the broadband bills? And then James, if you would talk about what you see, how a city can also deal with the broadband issue.
Sure. No, I'd be happy to. Thanks for the question. LB 996 is sitting on final reading, will likely pass when we reconvene. And it seems like a small step, but I think it's a really helpful one. It's a bill that would require better and more consistent data collection so that we have the information that we need to apply for and receive federal grants to expand our broadband. So I think one of the really positive things here is that there are additional federal resources available. We need to do the work to make sure we're drawing them down and applying them to the state level. It is my perspective that any infrastructure bill from the federal level that is part of a stimulus package should include broadband. And I think that's something we can do together, is advocate to our members of Congress that any infrastructure bill must contain broadband, and may even need a specific provision for certain rural communities who specifically need broadband. I would also add that Lincoln Public Schools has a list of internet service providers that are making special arrangements for Lincoln Public Schools families. You certainly should check that out if you're in the Lincoln Public School District. Those companies are Allo, Spectrum, and Windstream. So if your public school district doesn't have that information, or your school board doesn't know, you could reach out to some of those companies directly in your neck of the woods and see if they can make the same agreements for your area.
James, what is Lincoln, the city council, what are the thoughts there?
Yeah, so I think Senator Bolz did a great job of explaining what's available in Lincoln and how we can all partner together. The city can really act as a facilitator to make sure that we are getting access to people who need internet service, because internet is very important, especially as we continue to self-isolate and quarantine in our homes, right? Internet is one way that we can stay connected and that we can still continue to do our work. And so the city will continue to work at trying to figure out how we can facilitate making sure that internet is provided to people. Senator Bolz is right when we say that Allo, Spectrum, and Windstream are the 3 internet providers in Lincoln that are providing a special offer of the first 2 months free and waiving installation fees. So if you are in need of internet services or your family's in need of internet services, I would really suggest taking advantage of those 2 free months. There is a cost after that. With Allo, it's $10, Spectrum $17.99, and Windstream $19.99. But utilizing those 2 months free in order to try to figure out how we can come up with a more stable option.
That's excellent, especially for the 2 months, with school and things like that. That is a really good thing that's going on. Maddie, do we have some more questions in the chat?
Absolutely. So Senator Bolz, you mentioned the potential, some of the predictions have talked about a 15 to 25% loss in state revenue. Do you worry about this, or have you heard of anybody talking about this affecting school funding and the jobs of educators and paraprofessionals and others in our schools?
I think we always have to be diligent and protect our public schools and the workers in our public schools. The CARES Act includes $30 billion for an education stabilization fund for the states. And that's for school districts and institutions of higher education costs related to the coronavirus. So there is some relief that we know immediately will be coming. At the same time, we know that we'll have reduced receipts in the future. We also know that we'll have challenges such as increased demand from hospitals because they've lost revenue for some of those elective surgeries. We may not see revenue coming in the way that we expect because we have such a strong agricultural economy and commodities aren't flowing in the same way that they used to. So I think we need to be very thoughtful and very careful. The things that I think we can and should do are first use good fiscal information. We need to base our decisions on the facts, which is why we should have more frequent fiscal forecasts. The next thing we can do is use our cash reserve. And it's a really positive thing that we've built up our cash reserve over the past few years. So those are one-time funds that can be used to patchwork over shortfalls in the short term. And the third thing we can do is be cautious about making any long-term investments or any policy changes that are going to require ongoing funding. Right now is not the time to experiment with new funding streams or strategies. It's really a time to stabilize and get us back onto solid ground moving forward. So, that's one of the reasons NSEA is so important for your viewers. Thank you for being a part of NSEA. You're always there to protect education funding.
Well, speaking of NSEA, and we'll just do a little public service announcement. We are very pleased when we have our members participate in looking at candidates that we believe are very supportive of public education. And those are the questions and those are the interviews that we do based on our candidates that are looking to help our students and to help our educators and to help public education in Nebraska and in the nation. And so recently, NSEA interviewed several candidates for CD1 for Congress, and we have come out with our endorsement of Kate Bolz, Senator Kate Bolz for Representative, House of Representatives from Congressional District 1. We're very pleased about that, Kate. I know you're pleased about that. You joined us yesterday for our delegate assembly. We have some questions about like stimulus checks. Mm-hmm. If people were expecting stimulus checks and they haven't gotten stimulus checks, do you have any idea where they should reach out to on the federal level? And what are your thoughts about the stimulus checks and how we can make sure that people are getting, or the small business loans? We have members who are owners of small businesses as well.
Yeah. Yeah, well, first, thank you so much for your endorsement. I'm always happy to partner with NSEA, and I really, this endorsement means something to me. When teachers believe in me, I know I'm on the right side of the issues. So thank you for being on our team.
Thank you.
And you can learn more about our candidacy and our campaign just at katebolz.com. You can take a look at some of our policies, and you can look at our action center if you'd like to help us move forward. You know, the policy changes that are coming down from the federal level are very fluid. The resources from the CARES Act for small businesses ran out very quickly. The most recent act included an additional $321 billion in additional funding for the small business loan program. And that's really positive. We can be really proud here in Nebraska of Union Bank and Trust, who is identified as a national leader in that program, getting some of those resources out. I would say, you know, it seems pretty simple, but the best place to start in navigating some of those programs is to go back to the bank that you already use and trust, and have them help you navigate what you need to do next. In terms of your stimulus check, I would encourage a little bit of patience. There are lots of checks rolling out, and sometimes it just takes a beat for those to hit. I do think that's what your members of Congress are for. And if you're not getting the federal stimulus check that you believe is owed to you, you should reach out to your current member of Congress and make sure that their casework staff gets on it and follows through.
That's good. You know, I encourage my members to always reach out to our elected officials, whether it be a city council person like James, whether it be our school board members, our state officials, and our national officials. We all have a stake in all of this, and we all have a voice in this. And it's important for our elected officials to hear from us. Just like tonight, we appreciate both of you being on with us tonight. If you've just joined us, I feel like an announcer. If you've just joined us this evening, we have with us Senator Kate Bolz, our Nebraska Senator from the Lincoln area, and we have City Councilman James Bowers from Lincoln as well. And James, I was wondering, you know, one of the things that the kids and families and our teachers are dealing with is just a great amount of stress. A lot of anxiety and just, you know, not knowing what to do during this time. The kids are stressed. And if you were in a stressful home to begin with, and now you're stuck in that stressful home and you don't have an outlet to go to school and you don't have, what advice as a social worker could you give to our families, to our teachers? Teachers really like to help people, and we're really stressed about not being able to fix this.
Absolutely. Before I get into that, there's just one thing I want to add to Senator Bolz's comments about the stimulus check. And
no problem.
One thing that I've been hearing about is the risk of scammers taking advantage of the stimulus.
Definitely
going on. And so just three things I want to remind everyone of is that the government's not going to ask you to pay anything up front to get your money. There's no fees. There's going to be no charges. If anyone calls you and says that you have to pay $100 or whatever to get it, it's a scam, right?
Right.
The second one is the government's not going to call and ask for your social security number, bank account, or any credit card number. And if they do that, it's a scam. And anyone who tells you that they can get the money sooner to you is a scammer. So if you are suspecting that you might be getting those calls, please call LPD or the Attorney General's office to get that straightened out. So that's one warning that I've been sending out to all my constituents.
Very good. That's excellent. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate it.
To hear your question about kind of tips on how to navigate this, this kind of the slogan that I heard it from someone and I kind of stole it from them, is that what you are experiencing and what you're thinking and what you're feeling is completely normal. This is a normal response to the abnormal situation that we're finding ourselves in. Most of us have never been through a pandemic before. And so one of the biggest things to do is to give yourself the benefit of the doubt and allow yourself a little bit of grace and a little bit of grace with those who are around you. This time can really bring out the best and also maybe the most frustrated in each of us. And so being able to not sweat the small stuff and being able to take a deep breath and to relax and to let some of those arguments and fights go we'll provide a little bit of patience, because we're going to need a little bit of that patience from our loved ones also. One of my favorite advices during this situation is making sure that we stick to a routine. When we stick to a routine of work or self-care or even our meals, that provides students and children and ourselves a little bit of security, because we know what's going to come next, and it reduces a little bit of that anxiety. And in that schedule and in that routine, anytime that we can take 30 minutes of moving around or exercise for whatever you feel comfortable with is going to be great for our mental health also. And the other tagline that I think probably was mentioned before is, just because we are distancing from each other, we're calling it social distancing, but really we should be thinking of it as more physical distancing. Make sure to check in on your loved ones. Make sure to reach out to people if you need help. For teachers that are watching, please don't be afraid to utilize your school counselors and your school social workers, because we're here to help, and we want to help bridge that gap from the stressful time that families and students are going through, and helping them adapt to the new reality that we are currently in.
That is awesome advice. I appreciate that very much. Routines are great. I have a friend who has twins, and she posted today that they get up very early and they eat all 3 meals before like 8 o'clock. And then they say, is it time for lunch? And she said, it's just like, stop, and it's hard for kids who are used to, their parents going to work and them going to daycare. And now they're, like, here I am. So it's stressful. Is there any kind of resources though, any place that you would suggest though, that, if you're really needing someone to talk to, do you know of resources, through LPS or through the state, that they could call?
Absolutely. Again, Lincoln is really fortunate to have a lot of not only just providers and organizations, but providers and organizations that work really, really well together and are willing to come together to meet the goals to make sure that our city is healthy and secure. I got a couple numbers that I can share with you all, but the federal government does have what's called a disaster distress helpline. And that number is staffed 24/7, 360.
Maddie's writing it down, and we'll put it in the chat.
Perfect. And that is 1-800-985-5990. And that provides immediate crisis counseling for people who are experiencing emotional distress related to any kind of disaster. And it's multilingual and toll-free.
Nice.
If you don't like to talk on the phone, they also do accept text messages where you text "talk with us," all one word, to 66746. And then also Lincoln has a whole host of resources that also have their own 24/7 hotline. And those numbers can be found on the city website. If you go to lincoln.ne.gov, and you'll see a COVID tab, click on that and it'll give you 24-hour hotline to Centerpoint for mental health and substance abuse, Cedars to help with children and families, Bridge to help again with mental health and substance abuse, and also the suicide prevention hotline. One other service that is more Lincoln specific is providers in the community have come together and said that they're willing to offer free 50-minute mental health sessions for essential workers, for people who are helping keep the city going. And to sign up for that service, you just go to tinyurl.com/mental health Nebraska to get registered, and you'll be connected with a therapist who can provide a free 50-minute session. And it's our way to serve those who are continuing to serve our community.
Excellent. Those are excellent resources. That's one thing that, we keep saying, I said, yesterday several times, and it's, people are finding themselves in very, very unique situations. There wasn't a handbook of how to handle all of these things. And even if there was, we don't know how to do this. And we don't know how to do a lot of things. And a lot of things that we don't know how to do, we feel like we're failing. And so we shouldn't ask for help. And I think this is a time where you just need to ask for help, because people are willing to ask for, are willing to help you. So I think that that's one thing. If anybody's on here or they have families that are struggling, we have families that, that are students, and the teachers are really having a hard time because they know their families are struggling and they want to help them. So thank you very much. Maddie, I know we have quite a few things in the chat.
Jenny, I had a couple of other things to
Oh, sure. Go ahead, Kate.
if that's okay.
You bet.
One is remember that your and your students' insurance companies are also a resource at this time, and a lot of those services are now being provided via telehealth. So just because it's a mental health need doesn't mean that it's something that wouldn't be covered through your traditional insurance program. The same is true with Medicaid. If you're a participant in the state Medicaid program, telehealth services have been approved and can be provided through Medicaid assistance. I'd also remind people to use your EAP program. Just because you're not working from an office or you might be furloughed doesn't mean that your employee assistance program can't still serve you.
Excellent.
And the last thing I would say, and maybe if there are teachers listening to, those hotlines for domestic violence and child welfare are still running, and they are still things that we should be thinking about as people in this field. And you may struggle with what to do there, but if you see signs on the Zoom lessons that you're providing, if you see flags and indicators, those are still things that you can trust yourself to know that you care about those students and your instincts are good, and someone else can take the next step in terms of following through. But your eyes and ears may be the only eyes and ears those kids have.
Yeah, my friend just said she feels like it's kind of like vague because you just feel like you say all the time to your students on these calls, so how you doing? And they don't know, you don't know how to ask more specific, especially when you're on this. Do you have any suggestion how you would ask something so you're more specific?
Yeah, I have two suggestions, and James may have even more. This is really his wheelhouse, but I have two ideas. One is some simple advice is to name things, name your emotions, and give kids the words to talk about how they're feeling or what they're experiencing. Give them the language that they need to say, I'm anxious, or I'm tired of being cooped up, or this is a really stressful household, right? Whatever those words are. You could even give it a name like Corona stress, right? I'm feeling Corona stressed right now. Yeah. So giving kids more language to talk about what they're experiencing is good. The other resource I wanted to share, if you all haven't seen it already, Sesame Street partnered with CNN to do a town hall. And for little kids, this might be really helpful to have trusted characters that they know and love talk about some of the things that are scaring them or that they're struggling with. And the town hall is available online. If you just Google Sesame Street CNN Town Hall, it's publicly available.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Maddie, do you have some questions?
Yeah, I want to make two comments. One, I got to show that Sesame Street thing to my son. I have a 20-year-old autistic son, and trying to help him understand what he keeps calling the sickness that's screwing up his life. That's a great resource. I appreciate that. And I also heard from somebody who there was a gut feeling that something was wrong with the student, and they sent the police on a wellness call, and the student was actually in the middle of a suicide attempt. So we have to take these things very seriously. Sometimes teachers are that first line of support. So how about, do you know of any emotional or financial support programs for college students, recent graduates, our students and our pre-service teachers? What are you hearing about supports that might be out there for the younger people?
Mm-hmm. One place you can go is in the Q&A guide that we have posted on my legislative blog. There are a couple of short-term resources. One is if you have legal questions as a university student, say about your rental agreement or about your tuition agreement, there is a student legal resource center available through the university. There's also information about what you need to know and understand with your federal financial aid and with your work study programs. The other thing I would remind people is that just because you're a student and you might be working part-time or hourly doesn't mean that you might not qualify for some unemployment insurance benefits. So go ahead and pursue it even if you hadn't been working long or hadn't been working much. those are the things that come to the top of my mind. There may be others who have other ideas.
One that I would throw out there is a lot of these colleges essentially have EAP for students, right? So by you being a student, you're entitled to like 5 free sessions or whatever, depends on the college that you go to. So even though school might not be meeting in person, if you're a university student or recent graduate, get in touch with the college that you are attending and see what services are available to you. I know that a lot of students don't take advantage of the 5 free mental health sessions that are offered. And so I would call up your college or your university and find out if that's still an option, and to see if they can get you connected with a mental health provider.
Great. So I want to change this up completely. Like, we're going to move away from kind of COVID for just a minute. Take a little break, right? We all need to take breaks from this. So one of the things that we as an association have really worked on for the last several years is the recruitment of teachers of color. We have a very diverse student population. We need our teacher population to reflect our student population, but that's not happening here in the state of Nebraska. Do you have any ideas, or have you heard of anything that's really good or you're excited about that will help us diversify the profession itself so we're able to better address some of the needs of all of our students?
The first thing that comes to my mind is Senator Vargas has been working, and I believe he's been working with NSEA about how credentials passed from state to state. And I think making sure that we're welcoming teachers from other states is an important piece of the puzzle. I am term limited, so this isn't something that I can pursue in future years, but another idea for consideration is how do we help make sure that paraeducators or people who are working in after school programs or have taken a step towards youth and family services have that opportunity to take the next step, whether it's a specific scholarship program or whether it's making sure that they've got a career pathway. I think that other states are doing a better job of making sure that people who take that first step into education, if they want to continue up the stairway, have a pathway to do it.
We work with Educators Rising across the state, which is kind of like an FBLA, Future Farmers, but for educators. And we started out with just a few groups, and now we have over 600 students, and we have about 40% of our participants are students of color. And I know, James, working in the school system, that's a good place to start too, is to help our high school students or our even middle school students start thinking about education as a career. What are your thoughts on that, James?
Yeah, I'm thinking back to, there's a teacher at the school that I work with who has led us through exercises and has done a great job of starting a conversation and making it okay to have that conversation and to ask questions. And her name is Brittany Hodges-Bolkovac, and I'm a big fan of her.
Yay, Brittany. I was going to send her to all these conferences coming up, but yeah, she was a student of ours at Huntington when I taught there. I know, she's all grown up now, doing great things. Yes, and she's great. And yeah, we were sending her to a bunch of conferences, so hopefully she'll get to go in July.
Yeah, I can't say enough good things about her. But one thing she's really talented at is when she's done some of these exercises and these activities with us as an entire school, is really creating a culture where we become aware of our own bias, and become aware of our own judgment, and what can we do to be a welcoming school for all students and all staff. And I think that's very, very important to do. Kids are really perceptive. Students know what's going on. And so it's important that we become aware of how we can be great advocates for all students and all staff.
Yep, and then hopefully they'll want to move into the teaching ranks with us. That'll be great. Maddie, do we have some more questions out of chat?
Yeah, Senator, you have a question directly to you from one of your former teachers.
Oh, imagine who that is. Let me guess.
Burke Brown in Palmyra says that when you were his student, retirement was the last thing on his radar, but now he's
now it's getting closer, Burke.
Getting closer. Now that he just got his 4th hip, I think it was.
Yeah.
But he's concerned about the lack of leadership from Washington could leave Nebraska under duress. How can we work with Washington to make sure that the federal responsibilities do not get pushed down to the legislature and put NPERS at risk? How do we keep that strong?
Well, so I've served on the Nebraska Retirement Systems Committee for the past 4 years now, and I'm really glad to have had that opportunity. I think the first thing I would say, Mr. Brown, in terms of your retirement is Nebraska has done a really good job of maintaining stability within our retirement programs. We always fulfill what's called an ARC, the contribution that we have to include to maintain the level that we should to stabilize our retirement system. So in comparison to other states, we're in a better position than a lot of other states are to protect our teachers' retirement security. And my small PSA here is that reinforces the work that NSEA does in recruiting and supporting candidates and making sure that you have defenders of pension programs on the retirement committee. Right. So that said, the other thing that I would say is, we're building on a commitment. We've always been committed to maintaining a strong retirement and pension program for the state of Nebraska. So because you've built up that culture, there's a reason to believe that senators will still have your back in terms of maintaining the retirement programs. The next thing I would say is the investment office in Nebraska is really something to be proud of. And they have already provided the retirement committee with multiple scenarios and a lot of detailed information about what to expect as we come into making some budget decisions either this summer or next year. And so that pre-planning will help us know how that fits into the budget picture overall. And if we do have an opportunity in the next version of the federal assistance to use some of our resources to make up for lost revenue, some of that should go to make sure that our retirement fund maintains its stability, because it's not just about making sure that Mr. Brown and his retirement are stable. Absolutely it is. We got your back, Mr. Brown. But it's also about making sure that those retirees have money in their pocket to buy necessities and put gas in their cars and keep life going, which is also an economic stimulator. So I don't mean to answer too long, but I think we're in a really good place in Nebraska to make sure that we're protecting your retirement, but we have to make sure the full body understands that that must be a priority.
Yes, and Mr. Brown's daughter is a pretty new teacher as well, so we want to protect that for her and for Mr. Bowers as well. Right? Darn right.
James,
we gotcha. We gotcha. All right, Maddie, we got some more questions?
Yeah, one of the things that I read as I was reading your bio, James, is that you also serve on the Lincoln-Lancaster County Board of Health. Can you tell us a little bit about the role of the County Board of Health? I mean, we've had some questions in the chat about how is school going to open and when is school going to open? And last week we had Dr. Antone on, and he said a lot of this resides with the County Board of Health. So how much of that is residing with you in that role?
Yeah, so the Lincoln-Lancaster County Board of Health is an advisory board to the health department for the city and county. We are there really to promote and protect the public health of Lincoln and Lancaster County. And so our role in this process really is to help advise the health department on what the community is saying and also what our respective professions are saying. We have dentists, we have veterinarians, we have physicians, I'm a social worker on the board, and then also have representation from the city council and then also the county board. And so really providing that feedback and that advice to our health director and our health department. And I'm really glad you asked this question because I've been dying to tell Senator Bolz a story about her on why I'm a huge fan of her. So Senator Bolz is on the appropriate.
Facebook Live is a great time to do that.
So Senator Bolz is on the Appropriation Committee, and for the past 3 or 4 years, I don't know how long, I've gone and testified to the Appropriations Committee to ask for increased funding to public health systems. And even as an elected official, it can still be intimidating to go and testify to the legislature because you're sitting in this dark room and there's this line of people and some are paying more attention than others. And one thing I've really appreciated about Senator Bolz is I know that every time I went there, She provided eye contact. She made me feel like she was engaged, and she asked follow-up questions, and she's always been an advocate for public health. And at that time, that mattered, but especially as we're going through a pandemic, it matters even more. You know, this was an issue that Senator Bolz took very seriously and was willing to help me navigate, help me make me feel comfortable as I spoke on behalf of the Board of Health. And she had our back. That's just a simple way to say it. She's always had our back. And I don't forget that. So I really appreciate everything you've done for the Lincoln Lancaster Health Department, Senator Bolz.
Oh,
And across the state. Yeah. Good job, Kate.
Well, the truth is, you know, before coronavirus hit, we had increased public health funding, but not nearly to the degree that Senator Vargas was pushing for. So sometimes you gotta ask big to move the ball forward. So, you know, in retrospect, I wish we would have put even more in to get us started, but certainly I think the whole world's eyes are on the importance of public health right now. So thanks for your service on that board, James.
Well, I think overall, you know, I think one thing that everyone can agree on is that we're all in this together. And when you're testifying before a committee or when you're doing something like that, sometimes it feels like you're not in this together because you feel like you're here and they're there. But now everybody's pretty much going to be on the same playing field. And we have to really remember that we're all in this together. And I think that's why it's important for us to have these kind of conversations and to see where everybody's coming from, because everybody has a different perspective. They have a different, you know, our educators, our teachers, our support professionals, how they're coming from a different place. You know, our rural Nebraskans have something different, our urban, you know, but we get to know each other and we all find out that we have a lot in common, right? And I used the word grace that James was talking about earlier. We have to give each other grace and we have to give ourselves grace, and we just learn as we go together to help each other out. Maddie, what else do we have?
Well, you know, I want to follow up on a question with James, because you talked about the board you're on is advisory. Can you explain to us what is the interplay between a city council and the board that you're on and these 19 health units across the state? Who's really making the decisions about when we go in and when we go out of quarantine? I mean, the governor announces them, and I know he has an impact, but do you make that decision on the city council? Does the health department make it? Who's making these decisions?
So it's always been a collaborative effort, right? You know, all voices at the table. And I think that's one of the things that Lincoln and Lancaster County does really well. You know what I mean? Is everyone's opinions heard and every voice is heard and respected. When we talk about the health departments across the state, some of them look different. Some of them aren't advisory boards, but actually are policy-making boards. So typically how the Board of Health works is if there is a public health ordinance that comes in front of the city council or the county board, county commission, it goes through the health department to either get approval or denial on if that would be appropriate or not. And also taking the lead on testifying on some issues on how we can make sure that we protect and promote public health in our city and county. When it comes to loosening up like the direct health measures, the board definitely provides advice and is there as like a sounding board and to support the health department. But really that is left up to the health director and then also the mayor, and then with, again, the advice of the city council, the county board, and also people on those boards. So it really is a collaborative effort, but the Board of Health does not make that final decision.
Okay. And then we've got another question that kind of harkens back to the broadband a little bit, and to you. Some folks have asked some things around that. And when are we going to recognize that broadband is just an important utility, and when is it going to be designated a utility? And when we talk about some of these programs that, oh, gee, they can finally, you know, somebody said they can finally help us now, but some people have bad credit and they have a hard time getting into it. Is there anything we're doing to ease the access overall, not just during a time of crisis as far as internet services?
I don't claim to be an expert on that issue, but we did, as a legislature, establish a broadband task force that actually did some field hearings over the summer and produced a report. So if folks who are interested in that issue and the recommendations of that report, I'd be happy to make sure it gets in your hands. Maddie's shaking her head. Maybe I can get it to Maddie and Jenny, and you guys can take it from there. I think the legislature is taking it seriously, but just like, you know, building the highway system, it's a big endeavor, and we'll have to make sure that we've got the funding streams put behind it as we move forward.
Yeah, I think that some folks too need to spend 80,000 miles in their car like I do, going across the state, and understand what the rest of the state looks like and what communities are dealing with in other parts of the state. I think that's an important thing for us to understand. We had one member who wrote in to me today just saying, you know, just mental health services in her school and a small community. When we talk about the things that Lincoln is able to offer, because there's a lot of nonprofits, there's a lot of people working together, but then you go to rural Nebraska and you have a half-time counselor for high school and middle, you know, elementary, half-time for the whole district. And yet the needs of the rural districts are very, very high. And I think some of those things, when we go to Washington, D.C., we go several times a year to speak with our representatives there, and we talk about these things. Sometimes people, they don't get it. Kate, what do you think as a federal person and a state person, what can we do as educators to help people understand what our students are dealing with? Normally in the pandemic, yeah, they're dealing with mental health issues, but we're dealing with a lot of mental health issues across the state now.
Yeah, one suggestion I have is at the state and the federal level, sometimes the staff members are just as influential in policy change as the elected officials, because they're the ones who do spend time digging in to the nitty-gritty. And so one suggestion I would have is to make sure that you include staff members and even set up specific opportunities for them to talk with counselors or visit some of those schools, because they can persuade the members that they're working with. James doesn't get a staff like I do, so sorry to rub it in, James.
Sorry, James.
But that's one suggestion in terms of getting the attention of elected officials, is make sure that you're talking with the people who are close to them and advise them.
Very good. And we meet with their staff and stuff. And I think that we need to do more of that, you know, in any community, you know, getting folks to understand what's going on in their community, in their schools, and what the needs are, because, you know, those children, no matter where they came from, they didn't ask to be born into a situation where they would struggle. I don't think any kid ever said, "Ooh, let me be the one that struggles. Let me be born into this family." They didn't say that. And so for adults in any kind of community to be looking at children as the issue, that's not right. And I think that we need to come together and understand. And before all of this happened, we have a grant through the NEA to go out throughout Nebraska and do some town hall kind of conversations. We're very excited to do that. We were supposed to do that now. That's going to be put off. And it's not one of those things we want to do virtually. We want to be able to be in communities and talk to people and find out what's happening, so that, you know, the nonprofits that are around and everybody can kind of understand, because we really want to know some action. We don't want to just always listen and do these things. We want to have some action behind it. And so I think lots of the things that we're hearing from both of you have action behind them. You've given us great resources to share with people that can be used across the state. Telephone numbers that people can call, places that they can get assistance. And sometimes that just takes the effort to do those things. So Maddie, do we have any other questions coming forward?
You know, I think we addressed pretty much all of the questions that I saw come forward on the chat in one way or another. But if you don't mind, you know, sometimes people cycle in and out of these conversations. And I think, James, you listed so many really good resources kind of in the answer to one question. Would you mind going through those again real quick if you still have them in front of you? Because they were so great. We put them in the chat, but if you could just say them again, I think that'd be really good.
Absolutely. I'll start off by saying that there's a comprehensive list on the city's website, lincoln.ne.gov. Just go to the COVID-19 tab, and all of these resources will be listed. Just kind of talk on some of the more emergency type services. The Disaster Distress Helpline, which is a 24/7, 365-day-a-year national hotline to provide immediate crisis counseling for people who are experiencing emotional distress, and it's multilingual, is 1-800-985-5990, or you can text "Talk with Us" to 66746. There are, if you are an essential worker and you would like to have a free 50-minute mental health session, go to tinyurl.com/mental health Nebraska. And that was founded by Cassandra Liao. And then also Centerpoint, Kia House, Cedars Bridge, all offering a hotline, and that'll be on the city's website for help with mental health, substance abuse, or if you need help with children and families. And then Senator Bolz offered some great information about Voices of Hope and Friendship Home. Voices of Hope and Friendship Home, if you're experiencing domestic violence, 402. Voices of Hope is 402-475-7273. And Friendship Home is 402-437-9302.
That's
Perfect.
great. That's
Thank
great.
you both for joining us tonight. And we're going to make a couple public service announcements. But again, we had with us Senator Kate Bolz, who is a candidate for the House of Representatives for CD1. And James Michael Bowers is a city councilman from Lincoln and also an NSEA member, social worker from Lincoln Public Schools. We appreciate your time tonight. Maddie, we need to say, what about Teacher TV? I think Soledad O'Brien is going to be on Teacher TV tomorrow.
That's right. Soledad O'Brien is on tomorrow.
I know. Maybe we'll get her on Facebook Live.
There we go. Mark Gudgel, who's one of a teacher at North High School, and his journalism students did a Facebook with her last week, or a Zoom with her. So that's
all right.
Tomorrow. But we still need more teachers to volunteer for Teacher TV. We are paying teachers $25 for a 27-minute lesson. I got it right this time, Jenny. And $50 for a 54-minute lesson. You got to have commercial time in there. If you're interested in that, you can go to the nsea.org website /volunteers, and you can sign up for Teacher TV. You can also go to our website. The commissioner indicated last week that he would like to have a teacher advisory panel. I know we've heard from a number of people who said, hey, I'd like to do that. Well, you got to sign up to do it, not just send us an email. So go to the website, nsea.org, go to the COVID tab, which is the first tab on the left, and scroll down till you see the commissioner's advisory panel. And you can apply there. We also have on nsea.org a number of webinars that we're offering for teachers, both members and non-members. So you can click on that.
We are just amazing.
We are. We're doing all kinds.
We are. We have so much stuff going on. It's great. I will put some of these other resources on our website, I'm sure, once we get all this to add to ours. We like to beg, borrow, and steal other people's stuff as well, because everybody has good ideas. And I think we all know that, again, we're all in this together. We want to make sure everyone is taking care and doing what's good.
And there's one more announcement, Jenny, and that is that May 1st is the last day to send in your postcard to get your mail-in ballot. And we want everybody to mail those in. And the NSEA Voice is coming out next week, and our list of recommended candidates is in the NSEA Voice, as well as on the NSEA website and on NSEA social media. You can see those candidates who have been interviewed by NSEA members and who are strongly supportive of public education and therefore who have earned the recommendation of our members. So
exactly.
Get your postcard and then check the NSEA so you know which candidates are strong advocates of public education.
And read our articles too, right?
That's right, of course.
They're great too. Well, we appreciate your time.
That's my next job. I got to finish
Oh,
writing.
you haven't even written your article. Mine is done. It was awesome.
It was awesome. It was all about hope. It's very good.
All about hope. We're all about hope, friends. And I hope you all are well. I hope you all stay safe and hope you know that the NSEA is here for you anytime you need us. Thank you, Kate and James, for being with us tonight. Good night, everybody.
Good night, NSEA. Bye-bye.